All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for staying till almost the very, very end of the day. We have a fantastic panel for you talking about local first, which is a new approach to software architecture and really fits nicely into the front end. I'm the moderator. My name is Brooklyn Zelenka. I've worked in local first for a little over 5 years across auth, data, and compute. And actually, by coincidence, I'm currently doing a project with Peter at the end on a local first auth project right now. I will let the three panelists introduce themselves. Kyle.
Hello, so I'm Kyle. I kind of been involved sort of Netlify for a while. I founded Gatsby, some of you might have used. And I used to hang out with Matt and Chris, their meetups back in like 2015 or something like that. But anyways, the last year I joined Electric SQL, which is a kind of involved with the local first space. We're a sync engine, which a lot of people, is kind of a core part of local first. But yeah.
Hey, I'm Chris Anderson. I've been doing local first since I started contributing to Apache CouchDB back in 2008, and then co-founded Couchbase, and back in the early days of Netlify, I was a big fan and showing up at the meetups and building serverless integrations for FaunaDB and whatnot. These days I'm building Fireproof to build the database I've always wanted, because I don't want to have to think about the database, and I don't want you to have to think about it either.
Hi, I'm Peter Van Hardenberg. I'm the director of research at a research lab called Ink and Switch. And before that, I was at Heroku for a long time. We've been name-checked a few times, today I'm a huge fan of Netlify as well, and we use it at the lab. And I'm a co-author of the Local First paper. And can I ask a question of the audience?
Absolutely.
Just curious, how many of you have already heard about Local First, just so we know where we're at? Okay, wow, a surprisingly large number. That's exciting. Maybe we can get to the advanced stuff tonight.
Yeah.
I'll ask another question. Beyond having heard of it, who's actually built a local first application, even just on a weekend project?
One.
Okay, so a few, which is still great. Yeah, so just to sort of level set for everyone else, and because we have one of the authors of the original essay, could you give us a little bit of background? What is local first? What was the motivation? And maybe even tell a bit about the name.
Okay, yeah, so the basic idea behind local first software, it emerged out of some research we were doing at the lab, and we kept talking to, because at our research lab, we're interested in tools for thought, making computers that help people think more clearly, intelligence amplification, right, IA instead of AI. And we kept hearing from people about their frustrations they had with cloud-based technologies, right? You go in the garage, and your apps don't work anymore, and that's where your notes are. Or you're on the train, and you have an idea, and you can't capture it. And so we started seeing this pattern over and over again. And so we started working on something that didn't have a name at that point. And the idea was basically to move the data to the client so that it was always available, always ready. And then that leads to other challenges. Maybe we'll talk about that a little later. But that was the origin of kind of local first software. And we were trying to find a name for this thing. And we were like, well, there's no servers. We're moving it all to the clients. We're going to call it serverless. And then that month, the serverless movement started. So it was very upsetting that day. And I was like, what?
But
serverless?
There are servers.
It's all servers. It's all servers. What is wrong with you people? This is marketing malfeasance.
Yeah.
Local first is about running software at the edge, but it's not about being offline, right? It's about being local first, not local only. And so local first software is all about, having the data and the code running on the client machine, but still supporting collaboration, sync, those kinds of things. Because we want to have the benefits of the cloud, but we don't want to pay the tax, right? And that's both true in terms of architectural complexity and user experience. Because your software is a lot faster if you don't have to round trip to Ashburn, Virginia every time you want to do something.
And just a quick point of clarification, you're probably going to hear all of us talk about the edge, by which we mean typically end-user client devices.
Yeah, your browser.
As opposed to edge, like edge pops or something. Really the edge. So local first, largely about data. And in fact, we have database, and emphatically not a database, but still kind of
it's
not
a
database.
No. We always say, thank goodness we're not building a database. every time we do a database thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Your files on the server?
yeah, no, it's a data
Structure on disk?
engine,
Data structures on disk?
Yeah, and over the network.
Yeah,
with like
you
queries.
can access it over the
and-
network.
Yeah.
You can get
But-
parts of it if you want, you know.
The only thing I know
could
how
write
to
to
build
it.
is a database. I
Yeah.
can't do anything else, so I'm building a database.
Yeah.
My condolences. Yeah, we all know that's insane, so fortunately we're not doing it.
So data at the edge, offline first, caching, kind of how does this plug into concepts people are already familiar with?
Well, I fell into local first because I wanted to build developers what they want, which is a real-time database that runs anywhere. And if it can run anywhere, then it can run with just your getting started on your dev environment in your browser with a minimum code pen or whatever kind of editor where any other NPM module can run. And so if you follow those principles, you end up with something that's local first because it has to be able to survive on its own without any infrastructure support.
Yeah, and I guess I've always just been interested in fast software. I think it's just, you know, you want things to load fast, you want to click around and not wait and stuff. The first job I had out of school, working at a startup here in San Francisco, and I built, you know, kind of, I mean, it almost wasn't names for it then, but it was like, you know, real-time JavaScript app thing. And, you know, we kind of took what seemed like sort of a crude approach where we just did like 20 API calls and loaded up basically all the data for the user. And then it was just all sitting in memory and you click around. Anyways, people were just blown away by how fast everything was. And we had like WebSockets, you know, pushing in events and whatever. And it's funny because like, yeah, it was like crazy fast and it's still faster than most software today. And it's just, I keep coming back to that over time. It's just like the problem most software has is, you know, computers are extremely fast, but networks aren't. Like if you're going over the network to grab stuff, it's slow.
Light
So-
is slow,
Light is slow.
especially if you're in like Australia. Is anyone here from Australia, New
It's
Zealand?
really slow down there.
You know, it's also unreliable. The thing about light is it doesn't take much to stop it.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You have a wall, and yeah, exactly, yeah. So there's a lot of problems with, you know, electromagnetic radiation. But if it's on your device, then it's cool. So anyways, yeah, so I've always just been like, if you just load a bunch of stuff into the client, then it's really fast. And so Electric SQL, we're a sync engine. And the idea is to kind of take that idea of like making it really cheap to load a lot of data into your device to sort of the logical extreme. Because we hook straight into Postgres, you can just say, I want this part of my database to be loaded onto the client. And you get, it's like pre-cached, so it's like, you can load like 100 megabytes in a second or two. And then it also automatically kind of keeps it up to date. So if somebody writes into the database, it's kind of updated there. And it's really amazing because it's not a very complicated thing, but then all of a sudden you don't have to go back to the network. You don't have to go back to the database. You don't have to go back to the API because all the data you could possibly need for your app is there. So it really just, it's a transformative effect on your application. So I think to me, it's like local first is like a lot of great stuff, but like there's just sort of one like core first step that everyone should take. It's just like load more data into your apps and read from it versus going to the network every time. It solves a lot of problems.
Right, it gives you that speed and the reliability, and after you're reading that way, of course, now you want to interact and collaborate with that data and write back to it. And what's cool about that when you're on a local first platform is you're not dependent on cloud uptime for your performance and local uptime and availability to your users. So if something happens to their network, something happens to your server, they're still able to make progress on their task, and they may not even notice. That's been our experience.
Yeah, how many people have carried a pager or been on call here? Yeah, how many of you have never been woken up in the night? Yeah, I was on call at Heroku for a long time. Infrastructure sucks. I don't know if you guys have heard this. It goes down. There's this cloud thing. But it's, as Martin Kleppman likes to say, the cloud is just somebody else's computer. And sometimes that computer gets hit by a hurricane. And then you have a very, very, very long night, next night, the night after that. Now, I do appreciate about AWS that like when there's an outage, it's just like a snow day for the internet. And you can just like,
everyone's off. So.
yeah, you can just take the day off. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you're one of the people who has to go and fix it. But I enjoy not having to do that anymore, right? Like the responsibility. If GitHub's down, I'm just like, I'm going to go for a walk. You know? The problem with this local first stuff is if you move all the things to your computer, then you can keep working in an outage. Right? So maybe there's a trade-off.
Sorry, no downtime.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
no downtime. Yeah.
It's tough.
So you're trying to tell me that there's absolutely no servers involved? I've heard something about a sync engine.
Ah, yeah, okay. That is the dirty little secret, right? Like, it turns out that if you just have things on your computer, right, and then I send you a link to them, and then I close the lid on my computer, it would be nice if that still worked. So you want to put the data somewhere, and that's what the cloud's for, right? Like, the idea is not to get rid of the cloud, it's to change the way we write software so that the cloud is like a nice, helpful data store instead of the like all-consuming power at the center of everything. Right? It's there to help, not to rule.
Well, and we all know that because we're Netlify fans and we pack up our apps into the simplest possible thing that we know how to operate, and we understand what kind of errors it's going to give, and it's way less risky than the kind of complex app server approach that some people run. That's why we like the Netlify approach, and then you can layer local first on top of that as one of the APIs that you call into, where now your app is real-time and collaborative and competes with something with a complex server, but you still get that nice, why did it fail report from Netlify and this performance you can trust.
So then, you're talking about collaboration, things like this. What's local first really great for, and what are some cases that maybe it's less suited to?
Don't use it for something where you don't want to put that data on the edge, right? Like, why would you local first the entire worldwide phone book when your user only cares about one city?
Yeah, or HR data. Maybe don't push that to everyone in the company. That could be a problem. Though maybe, I don't know, something encryption, but we're not there yet.
Well, so internally, one of the things that I try to do differently with Fireproof, having seen a lot of these edge implementations, not be able to reach the use cases I'd like to reach, is we use a data integrity method that enforces causal consistency. We don't need to get into the technicals, but catch me afterward. What it means is that it's tamper-proof. That's why the proof in the name. So even if you're using it for like signing the thing where you decline the rental car coverage insurance, those kind of contractual configurators, that state can go to an identifier that's unforgeable that could get printed into a PDF and stand up in court.
So almost a little bit like Git hashes. That kind
Yeah,
of thing.
it's like a Git for databases.
So I think maybe one thing that's worth pointing out is, we've heard a lot about like FCP and LCP and so on, LPC, LC, sorry. It's been a long day. Lots of acronyms floating around out here today. I feel bad for the people in the back who are like, what is all this stuff? But when you have a site that is primarily about like time to first paint and like pushing static content, this isn't really going to help you that much, right? Because what you don't want is to be like fetching down a bunch of JavaScript and then fetching a bunch of data and then rendering things. If you're building an app like a Linear or a Spotify where you have users that are spending a long time on it and coming back, and especially if they're authoring data or working on the data, then this kind of approach makes a ton of sense, right? It simplifies the architecture. You're not going back to your like API team asking for another like API call every week. You're not blocked on anything. You just write the data locally and then it syncs. And in fact, it can even sync to other users, laterally. You go through a sync server because who has a peer-to-peer network? But it's architecturally very simple. It's not a great fit if you just have like content marketing sites and that kind of thing. If you can do a static site builder, keep it simple.
But now you've built your static site and you want to add those live features to it.
Oh, that sounds hard, Chris.
Why should it be hard? You should bring in something that doesn't need any additional infrastructure and makes it easy to add the live collaboration on top of whatever you've already got.
That's a good point.
So we say we turn brownfield into greenfield because it doesn't matter where you start. We can take that legacy and light it up with interactivity and collaboration.
Yeah, I think, local first is definitely sort of, app versus content sites. It's definitely sort of on the app side of the spectrum. Electric as a sort of a sync engine is it does bridge a bit into content. Because the idea of a sync engine is it's sort of like you can think of as like easy real time. It's like it's a quick fetch of the data, but then you sort of get real time updates. So you can imagine like a shopping cart or something like that, or interactive
catalog,
experiences
maybe.
or other stuff, or catalogs, or yeah. So there's a variety of things that you still do want to load a bunch of data. You want to have it like, and do sort of interactive, rich experiences on the client, so yeah. So there is sort of a wide spectrum between these things. It's kind of like gets more and more relevant as you kind of move towards the app side of stuff.
And are there specific teams that are already using local first in production? Like, anybody consuming, say, AutoMerge, which is IncoSwitch's?
Yeah, so I can maybe speak a bit to that. The AutoMerge CRDT is a project that we started at IncoSwitch about 8 years ago with Martin Kleppmann, who's a researcher at the University of Cambridge, and a whole bunch of great colleagues over the years. And it's used widely in production. We have lots of people building software on it. We've got great sponsors supporting our open source work, like GoodNotes on iPad and Bowtie, who are building like enterprise sync systems. And oh God, if I start running down the list of sponsors, I'm going to forget someone and get in trouble if I go any further than that. So I'll stop there. But yeah, we have heaps of people who are building stuff. And in fact, we live within the system now at IncoSwitch. And so, we just did a project with some Harvard astronomers who were writing science papers, and they wanted a sort of a live version control system. So we were working with them. But yeah, it's very much, it's not ready for every use, but it's certainly being used in many places. And I think maybe one of the meta things for you all in the audience to think is like, we're not saying this is the thing that you need to run to your enterprise architect and tell them that you need to adopt today. It's more of like, I don't know, you were saying it was a bit like React in the early days. Is that the vibe you'd give?
Yeah, like the early Netlify meetups and stuff. It's just like, there was a lot of interesting ideas and people were nerding out about it, but it was pretty rough. Not necessarily rough, but it was like novel
React was rough back then, I remember.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Fireproof.
Well, it's sort of like React was easy, but Webpack, that's where you really, that's where you really dive.
That's not easy yet.
Yeah.
Fireproof was designed as a risk reducer and to make developers more productive, but we're still early days, and so the folks who are adopting us are ones who see that competitive edge from getting fresh technologies and being able to do things their competitors can't do. So we're getting real-time AI, like character chat. We're getting pull requests from Wall Street hedge funds. I assume they're doing stuff like collaborative trading desk. And we're getting, we have a really fun local first, runs on your desktop as an alternative to QuickBooks. It's called Quick Check that one of our users built. It allows you to just print checks at home, because why should that be hard or expensive?
Cool.
Yeah, and Electric, we're almost in beta. So we're a fairly early open source project. And we call it like a sync engine. So it's also more specifically, we're a sync engine for Postgres. Because basically the idea is that you connect Electric to Postgres, and then clients can subscribe to any subsets of data in Postgres. And then any updates to Postgres kind of get immediately sent out to all the subscribers. So there's a lot of, if you think about a sync engine, if you kind of step back and squint your eyes, lots and lots of sync engines exist, because that's sort of, you load data into the client, the app, or whatever, and then you want to keep getting updates. So there's polling, there's web sockets, you can send events and apply them or whatever. There's a gazillion ways of doing it. And sync engine is sort of it's sort of a bulletproof, kind of heavily productionized idea, version of that idea. So anyway, so a good example is an early adopter of Electric is a startup. They do a background jobs processor, and so they have a dashboard, because you kind of do this distributed job, so you can kind of spin up hundreds, thousands of jobs running in parallel, and so then all those jobs are writing into their Postgres, and then their dashboard is just sort of all those results are streaming in as they come in. So it's a really nice, simple abstraction of things right into Postgres. You want that reflected in your app, and the data, all the data structures kind of just get pushed to the web. So, yeah.
And I think it's actually kind of interesting having, specifically these three on the panel, because they also have a slightly different take on local first, right? So in your case, it's a single Postgres instance that's doing all the writes and then replicating those reads into various clients. On the far other end of the spectrum, we have IncoSwitch with AutoMerge, where every instance is the source of truth, quote unquote. What are the, and especially because we have this difference, what are the trade-offs of those two? Like, is there additional complexity? Is there versioning challenges? How does that play out?
Yeah, so I think I can speak to auto-merge. So auto-merge is sort of like a version control for data structures. So like a decent way to think about it. This is really cool when you're building collaborative editors, because you can say like, well, how does my version of the document differ from this one? Let's make a branch, let's compare, let's see, oh, like what did Kyle add to the notes for the session? What did Jay Chris delete? Just taking out my stuff, man. No, he didn't really, he's lovely. But all of that extra data comes at a cost, right? This is just metadata to carry around. It takes time to load and so on. I think that's worth it for the kinds of applications we are looking at. And for people who want that, it's super powerful, right? Like when I check out a Git repo, I'm not like, oh, we should throw away the entire history. There's a lot of value we get from source control from being able to look back in time. But that's not necessarily useful for every use case, and it might be actively undesirable. Like if you're the New York Times publishing news articles, yeah, you may not want to leak your editorial process to the public. That could get you, libel laws, or violate libel laws. Now, actually, we've spent some time talking to them, and they have interesting editor cases, but that's a different story for another day. So yeah, I think that's kind of our take on it, which is, yeah, it's quite different from like a,
Yeah, they're more complementary.
Sure, yeah.
Because you like Electric, we're trying to basically replace fetching data through an API. We want to make it a lot cheaper to load a lot more data into your app, so that just clicking around, viewing graphs or whatever, anything where you have want to be looking and sorting through lots of data is very cheap to do. But yeah, the collaborative bits, you need that sort of, the CRDTs, the sort of the complex algorithms to allow multiple people to be working stuff at the same time.
I guess maybe one thing to point out that Firebase and AutoMerge have in common is that we have to deal with conflict resolution, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm offline and I, change something, and you're offline and you change the same thing, and then we come online, well, which one wins, right? And so we've done a lot of computer science-y stuff in the last few years, and feel pretty good about, I think, where we're both at this point, right? Like these algorithms are getting fast and reliable for sure.
And maybe leads to the thing that's different about Fireproof. The reason proof is in the name is because the content-addressed causal consistency that we enforce allows you to track data provenance across the edge, across multiple actors, to run a database in a Lambda function or an edge function or a mobile phone or a desktop or all of them collaborating on the same data set and know which merges introduced which data, have the cryptographic identity that would allow you to, sign, if your app needs this, sign those updates so you really have a full chain of custody of everyone who did anything. This means you could use it to write a mobile app that does your inventory in a way that your partners don't have to separately audit. It allows you to simplify a lot of things in your stack. And I think that's the power of local first is the things that you have to do to make it so you can move your data anywhere, they turn you to these data structures that have all the rigor that let you essentially be a version control for your data.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be fair to say that in the Fireproof or AutoMerge cases, you get benefits like you can keep working if you're going through a tunnel or on a plane, and because every individual device is the source of truth, and in your model, you can do things that are where people need to know that they're fully up to date, or they can read off of the Blue Sky fire hose, things like this, and know, here's the stream, and I can get that split up just the parts that I care about?
Yeah, the idea is that when you fetch data, it's immediately stale once you load it. So you can't really ever trust the data that you fetch through an API. But with syncing, you get the same data back through Electric, but then updates keep coming, so you can trust it. So it's sort of like how do you load a lot of data and then know that it's safe to read from, basically, and not showing something stale.
I gotta say, one of the things I like best about this stuff is we've been doing this for a few years now, and I'm OG. I learned PHP and Perl. So I've done a lot of things, Elm and Elixir, plenty of different JavaScript frameworks over the years. And man, I spent a lot of time at Heroku writing Ruby apps and doing sort of 3-tier web architecture. And I've done plenty of kind of modern, 12-factor.
12-factor app. There we go, 12-factor
There you
app.
go. Yeah, and
Classic.
shout out for 12-factor. Adam, I don't know if you'll see this, but thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've done a lot of this stuff, and since we got into this local first thing, it's so nice that like the app is self-contained. You just, you get into this mindset where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do my part, and then I got to wait for somebody else. Or I'm going to do my part in the front end. This is my skill set. This is what I'm good at. This is what I love. But I got to go figure out some weird back-end thing. I got to write a different app. I got to deploy it somewhere else. I got to figure out these like server functions. And like there's absolutely uses for this. I don't mean to say that it doesn't matter. But man, a lot of the time now, I can just build it on my laptop. I can push it to Netlify and send someone a link, and it's just working.
That's exactly what inspired me to do it this way, right? Is that should be the normal.
Yeah. Man, I don't need to call some person and get them to stand up a database for me. I don't want to open a ticket. I don't want to work with mocks and like made up data. I just want to like make the thing.
So as this becomes mainstream, there was an article recently from the analyst Redmonk saying that front-end developers are the new kingmakers. I think there's a convergence of a bunch of trends that are in favor of this style of data management. And the way that I see it is, we've spent a decade learning how to containerize and scale in the cloud. But that kind of infrastructure gets to be risky to manage because it's so opaque, you don't know what's going on in there, and the sandboxes aren't pure. There's just like a lot of questions when you have a old, mature Kubernetes type deployment. The new safe container, the place to run and integrate APIs where you already have access to end user identity and you could work according to their level of connection to the world, is to make your API calls from the edge and integrate in the browser. And so this is a story that people in this room have been familiar with since the beginning of Netlify, but as that becomes more and more mainstream, as browsers become more powerful, all that integration starts to happen there, and the developers who build the apps in this ecosystem are the ones who are choosing what the new API is that matters.
Browsers are super sweet. And I mean, I don't need to tell this audience. But the other great thing is like you don't have to pay for compute time that a user has running in their browser, right? Like the scalability story is very favorable here.
No, yeah, and it is just shocking how fast computers are when you profile stuff. Because just playing around with electric, we have kind of, if Linear, the project management tool, we have a Linear Lite, one of our example apps. Anyways, so when you run the example, you can choose how many issues to create. Anyway, so I just set it to like 20,000. Just to pick a bigger number, and turned into like 80 megabytes of kind of issue JSON, which gets loaded into the browser. And anyway, so I was just like playing around with like, you can like set filters in the Linear Light. And it's like, oh, and all it does is it does like an array.filter, and it runs a check on stuff. And I was like, wait, how is it taking? Because it felt really fast. I could change the filters, and it was like instantly re-rendering. And I just did like a console.time around it, and I think it was like 2 milliseconds or something to like iterate over 20,000 objects and run a few simple checks. It was running like 5 or 6 checks because there's a bunch of different filters that can intersect. And it's just 80 megabytes of JSON, 20,000 objects in an array, and it's just computers just blitz through that like it's nothing.
I concur. I've built some executive dashboards, which is a CSV with all the zip codes, and there's nothing faster.
Yeah. So like apps are really, really, really simple when you just load all the data. And then you can do whatever you want, and you can do like write garbage code, and it's still super fast, as long as it's in the browser.
And the network's really slow, right? Like it's a good ping round trip is like what 30 milliseconds? It's like that's 2 frames, man.
You could compute the filter like 100 times or something, So yeah, 30 milliseconds is forever.
Sorry to play time cop. I see that we're running low on time here. We're just going to run down the line really quick here just to wrap up. What is one thing that you're excited about for Local First coming up in the sort of near to medium term? And if other people are excited, where should they find out more? Let's start with PPH.
Ooh, so excited. I'm just loving all the energy around it. I'm so happy that y'all are here hearing about it. I was really amazed and so delighted how many people in this room have heard about Local First. It's great. You can, of course, try any of our projects, AutoMerge and Couchbase, Electric, and there's other great stuff out there too. They're not here, so I'm not going to talk about them. But like there's the Local First podcast at localfirst.fm. There's a Local First Discord. There's a Local First meetups happening around. There's Local Thirsts, which is like a meetup that's going to be happening. There's one here in SF in about a month. So yeah, just get involved and try things, right? Just get out there and have fun. That's my recommendation. Oh, and of course, you could always read the Local First paper, which we wrote. If you Google Local First, it's probably the first result.
Okay, so we're all, and not even the ones who are on the stage, any Local First technology is right now in the stage of $1 million screenshots. And that, I mean, if you were to like write a toy fireproof app and share it with us, it would mean a lot. So do that, we love it. We're gonna make all that easier. So far, we've gotten where we are with open source connectors that you stand up in your cloud, kind of no matter what cloud it is, including Netlify. But we're about to launch Fireproof Cloud to make it so people who don't want to deal with all that can just get started. So try that when it's out in a month.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's like there's a lot of energy in the Local First world right now. I think any sort of new movement around a, kind of a new idea like this, there's a lot of people talking about stuff. There's a lot of tools being created. But really when it goes mainstream, it's just everybody, lots and lots of people trying it out, talking about it, figuring out which tools work for which stuff. So yeah, I'd be super excited. Like you were saying, like if you guys want to like try out Electric, go through a quick start, jump on our Discord, tell us what you think. That would be super helpful. I mean, we're working through some last remaining stuff for beta, and then we're pushing towards 1.0. So it's open source, so all the help we can get to kind of make it an amazing product would be super nice.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Big round of applause for our panelists.
All right, look,